Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the final speakers night of our very strange, very challenging, but ultimately incredibly fruitful and rewarding season. I am Christy Chori. I am a very newly minted graduate of the theater program, and I am here with the assembled personnel of SLAPHAPPY, a Commedia, COVID Commedia. So we have our creator and director, Dr. Valerie Joyce. We have our director of photography and editor, Hezekiah Lewis. We have our production dramaturg, Kirsten Sughrue. We have our Commedia Consultant, John Bellomo. And we also have our associate artistic director and movement coach, Chelsea Phillips. So the way that everything's going to go tonight, we'll start with a little bit of a conversation. If you have questions, and we do encourage you to ask them, go ahead and put them into the, I believe it's the Q&A. You can put those in, we'll be able to see them. If you would like to ask your question live, just make a note of that in your, when you submit it, and we'll do that. Otherwise, I'm here to just kind of facilitate and relay those questions out. All set? All right. So this has been kind of a wild and woolly year. And Dr. Joyce, you know, with the cast and the crew spoke at length about where, you know, the genesis of this idea and this project, but I'm not sure that it's a story that all of the folks attending tonight have heard. Can you talk a little bit about kind of where this all came from and how it coalesced into what it ended up as?
I can try and remember back that far. Well, it's all laid out beautifully in Kirsten's program notes. So if I butcher it, you can read it there. But we, of course, were planning to do Sense and Sensibility this year for an audience. And when that became something that did not look like it was possible, we decided that that we would, I guess I started thinking about, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to film Sense and Sensibility. It felt like such a visceral experience that needed to be right, you know, 6 feet from an audience member. And we started to try and think about what could happen in masks and what would be rewarding to do while masked. And Comedia is something that's come up several times in the last few years about, I've seen several Servant of Two Masters that I've really loved over the course of the last 20 years. And, you know, it's one of those bucket list kind of opportunities. But when I went back to it, it felt difficult in some ways to invest in because of the storylines and things like that. And I started speaking really with Kirsten, and I said, you know, I want to take a lot of what's in Comedia, but then I want to do other things. And Kirsten was like, well, if that's what you want to do, I'll stay on. And I was like, okay, let's do that then. So we started talking about different ways to mix up Comedia. And I don't know, I guess over one weekend I was watching Pitch Perfect with my daughters for the 400th or 500th time. And I suddenly just had this idea about competitive Comedia championships, collegiate Comedia championships, and what fun that could be. And I enjoyed Waiting for Guffman, which was a similar style. Well, that's the style that I was thinking it might be in, and with the competitive nature of the Comedia troops. And I don't know, Signora Brunch was just very clear in my mind from minute one that the signoras would meet together and gossip, and that would be really fun. And honestly, I had no idea what would happen aside from there would be a regionals and there would be a nationals and there would be a winner. And aside from that, everybody else contributed to what happened from Signora Brunch to the end.
Thanks so much for that. We have a question from our audience, which I'm going to get to in a quick second. But, you know, you talked about how Comedia kind of has had, every now and again, there seems to be a bit of a resurgence, right? There was the James Corden and Servant of Two Masters and a couple other revivals. And so this is where, you know, John especially and Chelsea too, I'd love to hear your take on updating and adapting this very, very, very old, established art form and theatrical genre unto itself, and what the process of shaping it, fitting it, and making it relevant to both kind of now in 2021 and also the work that we were doing and the subject matter of the play.
Well, I guess it's funny because I don't really think of it as like an old form. I mean, I know that it is, but these are very human characters. These are, human archetypes that are still around today. And, they change a little bit. Like maybe we don't have the braggart soldier, but, we have the braggart jock, maybe, right? So, they're still basically the same. So it's just kind of fun to kind of think about how they can be put in a new context, how these archetypes, these human archetypes can, transcend time, and who are they today? And that's been going on since the Renaissance. We see these archetypes like all through history. They're in, Moliere and Shakespeare plays in the Renaissance, and then, even after the Renaissance and into film, and into TV. Mr. Burns from The Simpsons is a really good example of a Pantalone, like a modern Pantalone kind of character. So, they haven't really gone anywhere. They just changed a little bit. So to me, it's just kind of fun learning, teaching the old form to new people, and then seeing how they make the connections to who these characters are today.
Yeah, I think so like some personal history of Commedia. I first did Commedia with John like 10 years ago, and played a Zani who did a suitcase Lazzi in a show, and really fell in love with the I think so much of our acting training, especially in the US, is often focused on psychological motivation. It's based on Stanislavski or American versions of Stanislavski, and it's so internal and it's so personal. And one thing that I think Comedia gives a lot of freedom to is there is an external form that you are attempting to fill, like you are attempting to make yourself larger to meet a larger than life archetype. And I think that there's a real freedom in experimenting with performance in that kind of style or approach, when we so often do like an internal to external thing. So I think there's a lot of fun and a lot of freedom there. Plus, I mean, if you've ever given a slapstick to a room full of people, there's just something really fun about being able to make a loud noise without anyone being hurt. So there's a lot of joy in it, I think.
And it was so interesting when we were able to screen it as a department, when you saw the slapstick, when you saw the recorded performances, even though we all knew exactly what it was and nothing was being hidden from the audience, everyone still went, ooh, because there is, I think, that really visceral response. So we do have a question, and we have a question for our dramaturg, and this is from Laura, and she wants to know, what was it like dramaturging not only a new work, but one that was constantly changing even on camera as it was being filmed?
Yeah, in a single word, it was wild. I will say that, but more specifically, it was different than anything that I've ever dramaturged before, because I feel like a lot of my work previously when I worked on things has been like preempting things and creating a lot of stuff for the beginning of the rehearsal and making sure that those things are available for the director and the actors at the very beginning of the process. And most of my work was really done in post-production, in terms of making sure that continuity made sense, and making sure that the stories that we were telling made sense, and that the audience was would be able to watch the show and understand what was going on. It's also definitely strange. I did this pretty much completely virtually, so that was definitely another challenge, was not being in the room. And so it was just definitely like a navigating the challenges of being virtual and not fully anticipating at any I was telling Chelsea, I feel like I can't anticipate the problems to provide the answers because I don't know what the questions are. So it was a wild process. I'm happy that I did it, but yeah, it was wild.
I just want to shout out, for those of you who haven't seen it yet, that Kirsten's work on helping to knit together continuity and supporting the audience and making sure they have what they need to understand extended to becoming part of the show itself in order to fill that function. So extra mile for the dramaturg on this one.
Oh, there, now I'm not muted anymore. I couldn't agree more. And I think that idea of things changing and shifting and working on the fly, I think that improvising also, extended, on the other side of the camera. And so Hezekiah Lewis, we get to bookend our year with you. We started with Bacchae Variations, which was its own monumental task. And now we close with SLAPHAPPY, which was, again, a massive cast and a gazillion different storylines and other things to keep track of. And so, I think it would be really appropriate to hear a little bit more about, the trajectory of this year, maybe starting with Bacchae, ending with SLAPHAPPY, but also how your work and all of your assistants as well, your crew, work to help shape this piece as it was being developed, kind of in the moment.
I think, one thing I just want to say thank you for, allowing me to kind of step into that world of theater again. I mean, this is where my heart is. I came from this program. It's kind of the reason why I got back involved with the art. So whenever I had the opportunity to work with you all, I'm always honored. So that was the first thing. Like in the beginning of the year, it was really interesting to see, because it was even a monumental task in the first part, because you were dealing with 4 different directors as well. And they were all different in their, in their ways and their approach, and all the styles are so different. So it was really fun to really kind of get back to those, that kind of theatrical route, but also having an opportunity to really work with 4 totally different, distinctly different directors. And they were 5 short films, 4 directors, directing five shorts, and like I said, all completely different. Now, going to SLAPHAPPY, it was a completely different experience in so many ways, but it takes me back to the, I would say on the Bacchae side, it was more narrative, because there were scripts and things, and we do shot lists, and we kind of can really prepare for what to expect at times. And there was a lot of knowing what cameras and what angles and things like that. With SLAPHAPPY, we kind of get into the documentarian side of things. So, and which to me is the hardest form of filmmaking, because you have no control over what's going to happen in the moment. But also, it's also a plus, because then in film, you're not doing a line over and over and over again, right? So I also had to mentally prepare for how are we going to actually approach it. A, not having a script, but B, just really not making sure that we're not going to interfere with the creative flow either. And that's my job as a cinematographer or director of photography. And we want to make sure that we have the capacity to give the performers the freedom to do whatever it takes, and we'll try to capture wherever we can, right? So there was time I'll probably see a glimpse of a rehearsal, and then we had to capture it, right? So it's hard. It was really hard, but it was fun because it really kept you on your toes. Sometimes I'd even see the full performance until we hit record, or, we'll kind of see something, but I was like, okay, well, I thought I could do it by myself. No, we have to get another camera. Oh, this is happening. We got to get a 3rd camera. Sometimes I needed a 4th camera, but, we made do with what we had. And I think, I was really impressed with just the professionalism, the creativity, the commitment, because COVID was real, it happened, and it really affected the process. And seeing some folks online, seeing some folks, you were all committed. So And when I see that commitment, you know, my team is always going to be committed, but I really love being back in that stage and on that stage and really kind of getting the opportunity to really film this kind of creation as it went. I mean, it was a lot, but it was extremely enjoyable.
Thank you so much. We have another question from everybody out there, from Kate, and she wants to know, what was your favorite scene to film? So I'm going to open that up to anybody who wants to respond to that, and also extend it to say, you know, especially for John, you know, because you joined us completely remotely, you know, your favorite scene or moment or, you know, technique to work on. So, you know, either your favorite scene to film or a moment or aspect that was a memorable moment.
I'll go first. I can genuinely say I loved every single moment that the camera was rolling, and those who were in the editing process with me knows that the rough cut was 4.5 hours, and I would have just kept all 4.5 hours, and thank God for Hezi and the editing that happened. But I think the defining moment for me was over the course of 24 hours, because the Lazioff was just a spectacular thing to be a part of. It was the first time we had all really been together since March, and we were all, we were able to actually be in proximity with one another because we were outside, and it rained, and it had the headlights and the flares, and it was really exciting. And there was a moment at the very, very end in the big melee. I don't want to ruin it for anybody that hasn't seen it yet, but there's a melee, and Tina and Christy started slapping one another, and I was yelling in the background. I was like, cut, because all the things that we had planned had already happened. And Tina and Christy and I think it was Erin and maybe Megan and maybe Luke were still slapsticking, and it just went on and on and on and on. And every single person, you can see it in the film, everybody turns and is like, what is happening? This is not supposed to be happening. And the two of them were just still going and going and going and going. And it was just so inspirational. And the next day we filmed what comes before the Lazioff, and they were talking, and there's a slap circle moment, and Tina also has a real moment of breakthrough during that. And it's during these slaps. And for the longest time, we had been calling this the fourth show, or the Commedia project, or the fourth, you know, it was always like, we didn't have a name, and I didn't feel the name, and I didn't know what it was really about. And it was between that moment and the moment with Tina that I was like, oh, it's called SLAPHAPPY. Because we're so tired, and we're so tired of COVID, and we're all just a little delirious, and we are slap happy, but also it's just bringing me so much joy to watch these people do this thing. And just somehow slap happy was like immediately the right name for this thing. So that 24 hours was my favorite.
I think, you know, I haven't seen it yet, so I can't say what's my favorite part. I can't wait to see it. But I think, you know, I just loved being in the rehearsals with everybody. And I know that sounds like really corny and lame, but it's just really true. Like, I just had so much fun. And what was really cool, I think, you know, because I didn't work with everybody all at once. I kind of like worked with people and then would work with groups. And it kind of happened over stages. I felt like, you know, in the beginning, there was a little bit of skepticism about like Comedia. Like, is this going to work? Is this going to be funny? How is this going to happen? And then like each group had one night where it just clicked and people were just doing it. And it was like, it was just so much fun. And it just looked like everybody, you know, everybody on the other side of the, you know, coming through my computer screen was having fun. And I was like, okay, great. This is it. This is the work. This is what it's all about. This is just great. And it just kept on happening. Every night I would come back and, you know, there would be some questions or some, how do we do this? And, and then there would be something like really hysterical, and it was just so much fun. And that's the reason why I do Comedia, because it's just a lot of fun. And you guys just really were great. So I can't wait to see the show.
I would have to definitely say one of the favorite scenes I would say it would be the Nationals. Is it really, the Topper is just a beautiful stage. It's a beautiful space, and to actually see live theater like on that stage, and the costumes and the colors, and then Jerry's lighting, John's sound. I mean, it was just unreal to see all that beauty come together at once. And so I was in awe every time I saw. I was like, wow, we went from the Lazio, we went from like these regionals, and now I mean, it was just like the layers to this. It was amazing, and having that, and those that haven't seen it, you're gonna get a treat when you see the Nationals in the end. And it was just beautiful costumes, beautiful lighting, beautiful sound. Like I said, I mean, just the performance was great, and just to see how they adapted and really brought this kind of, like, I guess you don't want to call it old form, but this kind of new, I guess this new age form, or the I guess the COVID era form to the stage was beautiful to see.
I wasn't there for much of the filming, but the Lazio, I was there for the Lazio, and it was epic in every possible way, and it was so much fun. And when people started lighting flares, I was like, where are we? This is the most incredible thing I've done at Villanova Theater. It's like stand on the roof of a parking garage while people are lighting road flares. But just to give those of you who weren't part of the whole process FOMO, I'm gonna pick a moment that isn't anywhere in the film. So one thing I did early on was work with all of the troops. I think I worked with all of the troops for 3 nights in a row to come up with these slapstick drills, which we were thinking might be, maybe people will just be doing stuff in the background or something like that while other things are happening. So we were just coming up with silly, ridiculous things for people to do. And over the course of these 3 nights, we established like a set of calls. You'll see some of them in the Lazio, but like a set of calls for different kinds of slaps. And my favorite one was that we came up with one called Hit Me Baby One More Time. And over the course of 3 nights, this went from like a little bit of Britney Spears to a lot of Britney Spears that ended with everyone yelling "Free Britney." And it was so funny. And I think Stefan might have been there one night. So I think it might be somewhere in the depths of like blooper reels somewhere. But that was a pretty fun moment. But I wasn't there for much of the filming, so I don't have too many filming moments.
I forgot about the Lazio drills, because I definitely was able, the slapstick drills, because I definitely saw a couple of those. I was gonna say the only thing that I was there for filming was my scene, but Hezekiah and Valerie can attest to the fact that I was not enjoying myself when I was doing that, and I was very stressed out. I was like, I have lines that I need to say because I need to make sure the audience knows what Commedia dell'arte is, and I can't.
She was very dedicated to everyone's understanding. She pushed through. It was awesome.
I was very stressed out, but I was going to say, Chelsea reminded me, I think one of my favorite moments was not in a rehearsal, but it was in a production meeting where people were talking about, oh yeah, we're gonna have flares at the Lazio. And Hezekiah was like, oh, you mean like lens flares? And Valerie and Sherry, who does props, was like, no, I thought you meant like, I thought we were talking about road flares. And then everyone was like, oh, okay. And then suddenly everyone together was like, cool. How do we get road flares? Like how do we get risk and public safety on board to let us light flame on the top of the I-1 parking garage? And it happened. So that was a wonderful moment.
Yeah, I genuinely understood that. Christy, what was your favorite moment?
My favorite moment. Oh goodness. I think it was the night that we first used the umbrellas. And Andy, Dr. Blaze, who was also one of our movement coaches, we were just playing around with them and trying to figure out, how are we going to make this crazy idea work? And then Tim came in and started using his umbrella like the Les Mis flag, and then we were like, let's just do it. And it, Autumn was standing there filming and like shaking. She was laughing so hard and like trying not to laugh. And I think, when John talked about like the night that it just like clicks, I think that was a big night, at least for our troupe, because it was just like, oh, right. The more ridiculous this is, the better it is. Okay, we could do this. I mean, and the Lazzi off was just bonkers and off the wall and amazing. But I just remember that umbrella night being just a lot of fun.
You were also committed to it.
Sorry.
You were also committed to it. And I remember Anna saying to me at the end, because you couldn't see yourselves, and Anna was like, are you sure you really want to end with this like really sad, we're all on the floor dying? And I was like, no, watch yourself. And you all watched yourselves on the iPad and saw how hilarious you were individually and then as a group. It was an exciting night.
It definitely was. We have another question, and this one is from Megan Dietzler. And again, this is open to everybody, so please do chime in. What was one of the most surprising aspects or moments or experiences from this process? What surprised you?
Wait, I've got an answer for that one. So I have been a part of a fair number of devised processes in my life as usually as a dramaturg, and this one was far and away the loveliest, the nicest. Like, part of me, I think, was waiting for, I was like, okay, there's gonna come like that moment when everything's impossible, or like everything's hard, or like everyone is like, their commitment's flagging or something, because that tends to happen, or, everyone's mad at each other, and like, it just never happened. Like, truly, Valerie laid out this idea and everyone was like, great. And then everyone just like worked their butts off to make it happen with like the best goodwill. And it was unlike any other process I've been part of, even with the complexity of filming and a 4.5-hour rough cut, and like just everything that you could wish would go well in a process like this really did go well. And I that is particularly amazing to me, having been part of lots of other rooms where this kind of work is being made. So
I think for me, it was that 4.5-hour rough cut. No, it was, it was interesting because when you're in it, you're just in it, right? So I'm knowing like, okay, we're getting footage, right? But you got to think about it. It's 4.5 hours times 3 cameras. So you have to double up that footage, syncing all the footage, organizing all the footage, and say, okay, sit down, we get this assembly cut together. It was actually more than 4.5. And just like, okay, now I see this is a mountain. We have to get past this, right? But, and for me, I knew it would work out, but it was like, we actually shot a feature film. Like, this is definitely a feature film, 2.5 hours. But it was really like, Chelsea was saying, it's like the commitment that you all had, and, the meetings. I know there were ideas of making it into a docu-series and this and that. I was like, well, we didn't shoot it. I didn't go in with that process, and we'll make it work. But, and me, I'm just like, I always feel like it's going to work out. But I feel like we had a lot of support throughout the process. Like she was saying, I mean, everyone was chipping in. Like I had spreadsheets and Excel sheets, and Valerie had to go through all that footage. And I was like, it was like a formula happening. But one time, and then one night we set up to about almost 5:30 in the morning in the lab, and we just knocked it out. And I was like, well, I kept looking back, and Valerie was still on the couch going. I think she fell asleep like 30 minutes. Nope, she kept going. I said, okay, we're doing this then. Let's do it. So we stayed up all night, 24 hours, and made it work. But I think having that moment and understanding like that commitment and seeing it from the director, like I knew like it was definitely something that was special. So Yes, the surprise was that 4.5, you know, cut, but even more surprising just the commitment that you all had to really see this all the way through the finish line. So
I have to hand that back to you though, because around 2:30, I was like, how you doing over there? And you were like, I'm good. I was like, all right, we're doing it. Kirsten, did you have one you wanted to throw in?
I do. I was going to say, from just like watching the rehearsals and really not seeing any of the actual filming, how full everything felt. Because I didn't really get a chance to see what storylines people were coming up with, and so being able to see how full the final product felt and how like deeply everyone thought so much about their characters, and to be able to see that on screen when I had really only seen like a lot of the scenario building and the Lotsie building was a really great moment.
Yeah, I think everything is a surprise to me, really, to be honest with you, because Valerie called me up over a weekend, like back in January, I think it was, or something like that, and explained this idea to me, and I was like, a Commedia conference, and they're like competing with each other like an a cappella group, and it just made no sense to me whatsoever. And I was like, I think I have to work on this show. I think I really want to figure this out. Like, it just sounds like it's going to be crazy, and I have no idea what it's going to be. I never seen Pitch Perfect. I had no reference to go from, but I was like, all right, yeah, this sounds great. This sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun no matter what. So, and I think you actually said that in the call, was like, my main goal is to have a lot of fun. And I was like, all right, you had me on that one. So like everything else, I was like, oh, all right, it'll work itself out. And it sounds like it has. So like, it's, it was just a lot of fun. So yeah. And I think what Chelsea said is true, that, there are those moments in devised pieces, and especially with Comedia, where everybody, in rehearsals, it's really funny because when you start rehearsing Comedia pieces, like everything's really funny in the beginning. And then you get to a point and you don't think you're funny anymore because everybody's seen the jokes. And then those rehearsals get really, really tedious because you're like, I'm not funny and nobody's laughing anymore. And but I didn't really feel like that happened in this process. Of course, I wasn't there all the time like you guys were, but I mean, every time I came in on the room, into the Zoom room, I was laughing. There was never a moment where I felt like the comedy had, kind of died down at all. So that was pretty cool to see too.
I have so many things that I think that I just genuinely think that every single thing surprised me, because it was just so creative constantly that it was, I feel a little hole in myself now that it's not still happening. But I'm gonna pick a couple of quick ones. I think that the first day that we did Troop 1's filming, or I should say the Ciao Bellas, not the Troop 1, filming, and Hezi and Caleb were, I'm pretty sure it was the moment with Allie and the stick. And it was just, it's quiet and everybody's filming and it's very serious. And I had never called action before. I had never called cut before. And I've called cut after Allie with this stick thing. And Hezi and Caleb, the tears are running down their face. And I was like, oh, it's really funny. To people who haven't been watching it, it's like genuinely funny. So that was a really exciting moment, because I was like, this might work. And then I think the night that I sat with Hezi until 5:30 in the morning, I learned so much about what is capable with in film, and just I can't, the sheer tonnage of what I learned on this project will sustain me, I think, for the next 20 years of my life. And then I will also say that in the showing itself, seeing it for the first time, but really it was actually the montage, which I kind of blown off. I was like, if we get it, we get it. If we don't, we don't. You know, it's the sort of build up to the final thing, and there's going to be makeup and mirrors and shoes, and I don't really know how it's going to go together. And even that night, Hesse was like, here's these things in order. And I was like, yeah, I think that's what I want, but I'm not quite sure. And then it showed in the film, and I had never seen it. And I just like tears were streaming down my face of just such joy. I just never imagined it would look like that. And it just showed all the joy that they had as they were doing it. And it just was, you know, all the things I ever dreamed, more than I dreamed it could be, really.
It makes my heart so happy just hearing, like, getting to vicariously relive all of these moments, and, you know, and anecdotes. And it got me thinking about, and what people were describing about, you know, as the world is kind of reopening, and we're looking at, you know, it's almost like hitting the reset button. I'm curious, you know, and this is for everybody, you know, as theater practitioners, film, media creatives, what do you think the future of kind of this multimedia? I mean, it came out of sheer necessity, but I'm interested to know, you know, or if you've had a change of heart, maybe you were like, this will never happen, and now you're like, I don't know. But what do you think the future is for this kind of mixed media approach to theater making and storytelling?
Well, I think everyone here, everyone who's on the panel, maybe not John, but everyone else heard me say, I'm not making a film. Like, I want to do theater, and it's going to be theater. And then we got to the first day of filming, and I was like, oh, I'm a filmmaker now. That's what I'm going to do. And I don't think that is what I'm going to do, but I would definitely do it again, because it is, I said to Hezi, his job has all the great things that my job doesn't have. Like, you get the perfect performance and you capture it forever and it never changes, and you get to decide exactly what angle and what the audience sees at every moment. But but my job has all the things that his job doesn't have, which is the audience's reaction, like in real time, where you can hear it on the stage and you watch actors grow into something over the course of a run. And I don't think one will ever supersede the other, but it's super fun to do every once in a while.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I mean, me personally, I've always been trying to fuse both the kind of theatrical world with our theater world with the film world. I always tell people the essence of the arts comes from the stage. And, you know, I don't think a lot of people understand the importance of acting, right? So it's like the soul, the spirit, just that sense of like creativity. For me, I've learned so much from the program itself, the theater program. Get into film, you know, yes, you kind of have the luxury of the edit or the close-up, or you do control that. But sometimes I truly do miss those moments that the energy is different every night. You know, opening night is different from the night two and the closing night, and finding those moments where those mistakes are made, and how do you kind of, wrap around those. I've seen a couple of those moments within some of the performances, and just to see how actors really, kind of really find ways to enhance or engage, and really react in this kind of proscenium kind of feel. You don't get the opportunity to really kind of, force feed the audience's attention. So that performance really has to do that. So that's the biggest part I miss about it, is that natural organic performance piece. But it really motivates me, because I'm constantly trying to find creative ways to really fuse both of these worlds. And hopefully someday I'm back in that stage directing a show that does have a lot of multimedia elements, and kind of using video and film and also live action, even, music and live music and singing. So it just really motivated me to do more work into that. And that's kind of where my research and some of my work is actually heading now. So stay tuned. I definitely want to really kind of bring out and really fuse these two worlds together. And I think, Villanova is the perfect, environment and ground for that, because I feel like you are all so innovative in welcoming this kind of film narrative or this film format into your world. And I want to hopefully figure out a way that we can definitely fuse that and, you know, share something, you know, something beautiful and unique to the world.
I think that I think one really direct impact is that I think all of us want Hezi to come work with us all the time whenever we can come up with a reason. So we'd like to adopt Hezi, please. But I also think, you know, it's so interesting to me, like I mean, and Hezi just made this point that like, you know, initially early film is like so indebted to theater, and then theater starts to see what film can do, and then avant-garde theater gets so inspired by film. And so like for a long time, they've been these mutually reflective, entangled art forms. And then I feel like recently, like, I feel like that there's also this discourse of like competition between them, that like, you know, that like it has to be either or something. And I think what this process has helped me reappreciate is that no, they're two art forms that do different things really, really, really well. And to have the ability to blend them or marry them so that you get the best of both worlds is a really incredible opportunity. Like, even though this entire thing is filmed and edited, the fact that it's improvised retains some of that like live, spontaneous, in the moment interaction. The fact that there were generally really long shots as opposed to a set shot list that we knew we had to hit allowed a lot of that like spark that I think we associate with live theater to be captured still, even though it was film. And film has given us the ability to make the art that we love together in a year when we couldn't do it otherwise. So I personally feel really grateful for the opportunity to appreciate both art forms, as opposed to feeling like you have to stake your allegiance to one or the other and never the twain shall meet.
I think my answer is a little bit less in terms of multimedia, and I think that everyone else really did a great job of covering how in the ways that you can merge theater and film together. And my immediate thought was the sort of reach that being able to broadcast our show can have. This is admittedly my marketing brain coming on, like I'm putting my marketing hat on, but you know, the fact that I know for Bacchae Variations, we had so many new patrons who were able to see that show from across the United States. And so the fact that parents and family members and perfect strangers who would not normally be able, 1,500 patrons in 32 states and 4 countries for Bacchae Variations, like that's wild, that these people who would normally not be able to come to Villanova to see a show can watch and see the art that we've put on. And I think that that's great. Also, in terms of accessibility, it's enabled us to do things that we wouldn't normally be able to do. We've been able to close caption all of the things that we've done. Shout out to Zach for closed captioning this. You know, we've been able to provide access in ways that we aren't normally able to. And so I think that that's just one amazing thing that has come out of an otherwise a precarious and rough year. But, you know, in terms of reach and accessibility, it's done great things.
Yeah, I think, you know, theater has been dying for about 4,000 years. So, you know, it's just keeps on adapting. And that's what we do as theater artists is adapt. And every time we adapt, we, you know, take what we learned and incorporate it, right? At some point, you know, somebody said, you can't step out from the chorus. That's wrong. You're not doing theater anymore, right? Or, you know, you can't have lights. You can't do it under lights. That's not theater anymore. So, you know, to say like you can't do it with cameras or screens or things, and then that's not theater anymore is, well, you know, that's not true. So I think it's going to be, you know, we're going to see it be incorporated, maybe more than it ever has before, because now we know how to do it. And you know, like Kirsten said, the reach is really cool. The fact that, you know, we could watch theater from around the world, and people could see us from the other parts of the world, and you know, we could work with people across the country. I'm working with a theater company down in DC, and you know, I'm in Philly and they're in DC, and one of the other actors is in LA, and we're all going to be in a piece together, you know, so that's really cool. And we don't have to leave our house. So, you know, I think it's just going to be incorporated into what we do from now on.
I genuinely hope so. And I am so, continue to be so inspired. I mean, having been able to be a part of the production and to have worked with all of you in various capacities. And I'm reminded of this, you know, not just the mashup of genres, you know, it's theater, it's commedia, it's improvisation and devising. It's also film, it's also television, it's reality TV, it's, you know, and thinking about the ways that they all kind of, you know, feed in and out of one another. And we see that, right, the personal and the universal, and the universal and the personal, going back to these commedia archetypes. And then as Kirsten so beautifully put it, the way that, you know, digital media and film has allowed us to become more accessible and have a broader reach and become even more inclusive, I think is a really encouraging and inspiring thought to think about where we're headed. And so I think where we're headed right now is into a well-deserved summer recess for all of us folks in academia land. And then we start afresh in August, and that's going to be really exciting. I want to thank everybody who was able to come out tonight. Thank you, Dr. Joyce, Dr. Phillips. Thank you, John. Thank you, Hezekiah. Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you to all our friends out there sitting behind your computer screens. It's been, as our artistic director, Michael Hollinger says, constraint fuels creativity. And it has been a year of incredible constraints and even more amazing creativity and growth and successes. And there's only more to come. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful evening and a wonderful summer.
Thank you, Christy.